latest episode of the Lisa Pezik Show. Ooh, we got a good one today. Y'all know how much I love good stories, to the point conversations, and getting right into that thing that you need to change your perspective, change your life, that quick win. And today we're talking about how to get more connected with yourself. As we are filming this podcast, we are still in the midst of COVID-19. We are in the midst of a huge amount of change happening in this world. And I think one thing COVID taught all of us was that you can't run from yourself in this time. We are at home, digging in, getting really intimate, and that brings up a lot of emotions. And that brings up a lot of hard things. And my guest today, Jen Sugermeyer, who I'm going to tell you all about and welcome in a second, I can't wait to dig into her story because she's been through hard things. And we all have. And we all have. And I can't wait to dig in and really use her pain, use her learning to show us that we are all connected. So Jen, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Heck yeah. So let me tell you about Jen Sugermeyer. So she is seen on NBC, ABC, Fox, and more. She transformed her own life and is now transforming lives around the globe. A #1 Amazon bestselling author, Jen wrote Reset to help others claim the life they deserve and learn to love themselves using her trademark methodology. In her mid-30s, Jen looked in the mirror and she didn't recognize the person staring back at her. Although she appeared to be successful, a successful businesswoman, she was living a dark double life that no one could see, and she was at her breaking point. In and out of jails, hospitals, battling addictions, Jen failed for 10 years trying to get a handle on her life. And it was when she heard 7 words that changed the course of her life. I'm not going to tell you what those 7 words are. We're going to dig into that. Jen was able to endure an incredible transformation as she discovered that loving herself was the key to remove her destructive behaviors. She's trademarked her program Reset and is now helping others reclaim the life they too thought they lost through a holistic approach to life and happiness. Okay, Jen, what were those 7 words that changed your entire life?
The gentleman that I was speaking with, so just to put it in context, so I had tried to get sober for 10 years. And that was, I was an alcoholic, I would say probably 15 years. I battled pretty hard. I've had addictions for decades, and it was one addiction led to another. And it was really hard for me to get close with people. I was kind of kept them at some level of distance because I didn't want them to see the destruction. And I was really at a point, I was ready for change. And I kept telling myself, maybe if I get in a relationship, then I'll be happy and I'll stop drinking, right? I always had this if then, if I get a better job or if I make more money or then I'll be happy, then my behavior stops.
Yeah.
So I got in a relationship with a gentleman, and poor guy, no pressure, just fix me, right? And we sat down after 4 months and he said, Jen, you need to learn to love yourself. And those were the 7 words that cracked me right open. And those 10 years that I tried everything, I'm talking about acupuncture, neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, therapy, AA, whatever I was trying, stand on your head, I don't know. It was those 7 words. And finally, the stars aligned in my life, and everything has changed since. So
wow. So before, in and out of jail and hospitals, and was it trying to avoid hard emotions, or what fueled kind of the behaviors or the patterns that you were stuck in at that point in your life?
Yeah, when I was 12, I started with an eating disorder. And just a little bit about the voice that you're hearing. I am 6'1", and I absolutely love my height. But growing up, it was very difficult. I got very tall, very fast. And I think when I started high school, I was like 5'11". I mean, I grew like weeds,
Yeah.
and it was tough for me. And when I was 12, and I was a little rounder, and so for me to be tall and rounder, and it's just an awkward time of your life. And I unfortunately, I had learned about these eating disorders, and I thought that was an easier, softer way than trying to get shorter. And I thought about shaving I mean, how do you get shorter? I guess you don't. So, and so I learned to live this double life at a real young age because I knew that wasn't mainstream. And I mention this because it's a really important part of my story, that because at a very young age, that as your brain is growing and you're learning who you are and you're just figuring out life, I learned to hide what I didn't want the world to see, and that became my norm. And I became disconnected with this child that once upon a time when she was 5 was so full of life, and now all of a sudden here she was, and living in two worlds. Now fast forward to being 35 and an alcoholic. So I had learned that behavior, and my addictions just kept getting worse and worse. So yes, I was finding myself in and out of situations that I didn't ever expect to be. That was never the life or the family or the crowd that I ran around with, any of that. And yet I was literally practicing for speeches for the CEO in jail, getting out and going into the office. Talk about unmanageability. So that was a little snapshot of about 25 years of my life, to sum that up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when your partner said you have to learn to love yourself,
Yes.
were you like, F you, who do you think you are? You don't know me? Or was it like, did you accept that?
I
What was your first
accepted.
words? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I froze for like 20 minutes. I honestly, I think it was like a movie, like everything, I
Yeah.
froze. And I swear to you, I did. I saw that I was always very vivacious. I never knew that I was different until people started telling me, oh, you're so tall, or you're so this, or you're not, right? But when you're a child, you are you could be a dinosaur when you grow up. This is what I'm doing. This is my imaginary friend, and it's a real thing, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
have this just perspective on life that's just so pure. And that's who I was. I was going to be a singer. I loved myself. And then all of a sudden, I didn't. And I saw that child and I said, man, she is so disappointed in the person that you've become, because she would have never expected this for you. She loved herself. She was going to stand on that stage. And then I swear I saw my future, and it was just empty because my behavior was keeping me from having personal relationships, not only with others, but with myself. And I was doing everything I could to protect this life in corporate America that I tried so hard, and I was doing so well. And I was, senior director in IT, and I was really climbing that corporate ladder. And for what? For what was I protecting? This life that I just didn't like, I despised. So when I heard those words, I saw that little child and I saw the older version of me, and I was just sad, quite frankly. I felt more alone in that moment than I ever had. And when I started to speak, I said, I commit to you, I commit to us, and most importantly, I commit to me to
Mm.
learn to love myself. And that's how, when I came out of that 20 minutes of just thoughts encompassing my brain, that's what I said. It was a very, very powerful moment for me in time.
Wow. Wow. And I think sometimes, it's that surrender piece. We
Mm-hmm.
want to fight and fight and fight. And exactly like you said, what are you fighting for? What are you fighting to protect? Why? Why
Yeah.
are you holding on to this identity or these habits? And how amazing that he said that to you.
Yeah.
Because so many times too, I think we want to help, if it's not us going through it, but someone that we see going through something, we want to say something, but we're like, oh, we might offend them or they might get mad at me. Our
Yeah.
words have so much weight. Our
Yes.
words are powerful. So what
Yeah.
did you do? What changed for you then? What actions did you take? What habits did you change? Where'd you go from there?
And this is where, and I didn't realize until about 7 or 8 months in that I was creating a program is really what I was doing. I tried all different things just to see what would start working in my life. And I knew that some things just weren't a good fit. I knew I had anger that I needed to deal with. I hadn't felt anything in decades. I was running from those feelings. So I knew I was going to have to face them. I knew I had negativity. So I started isolating I would start working on an area and, anger, for example. And my friends, people that I talk to, my colleagues, when I tell them I was working on my anger, usually the response I get is, "Oh, really? I never thought you were angry." And because that's the facade that I wanted you to see. The person I was on the outside is the person really I identified with. But when you peel the layers back, there was so much inside and that person was winning the war in my soul. And that's the person that I needed to address. And so, you know, I would find myself like when I was driving, just so angry. Driving is such a I don't know why it makes us so angry. And I don't know why I felt like I could say these things to people behind a little thin sheet of glass that I would never say to their face, right? But I would just, well, why did your mother have you? Just like evil things. Like you would never say that to anybody, but it was, and so I had to work on those things. And so I would play little games in my mind that anytime my blood pressure would start to rise, I would have a trigger word actually. And so first I could identify, okay, I'm getting angry. And then I'd flip the situation around and I would, oh, that driver that's driving erratically, maybe he's taking his wife to the hospital. And I would justify, because I think as humans, we want to justify behavior. So these are the little things that I started doing, and I started working on my mindset. So it was the anger, it was the negativity. How do we take something negative and turn it into a positive? It was like I was in this video game for a good solid 4 months, and I was just reframing, because again, it's learned behavior. I didn't grow up knowing that I was too tall, and this, that, and the other, whatever people told me. I learned that. I learned all these things over time. I learned that I wasn't good enough. I told on myself those. So I had to flip the script in my head. So I started going through and working all those things. And that's how I came up with Reset.
I love the unlearning, the learning and the unlearning and the relearning.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, go ahead, please. Yeah.
And it takes time. It takes practice. It's not that you just do it once. And, I look at where I am now versus where I was then, and I still have to practice on, but it's like that muscle memory. When you go to the gym, you can't go do crunches one day and have abs. You have to do it for a period of time. And then once you have abs, okay, then you've got some muscle memory, and then it's, your routine can change a little bit, but you have to get to that muscle memory. So you have to stick with it, but you can unlearn everything that you are today, everything that's in your mind. You can flip that script, and that can be negative or it can be positive. And that's a choice that you make.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And did you have help along the way?
No, I did this all myself. It's a very personal thing, and I'm very open now about talking about where I am and where I was. And I do that so I can help others. And I understand the amount of stigma that's around raising your hand and saying, you know what, my mental health is in the trash, or I need help, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm struggling, or whatever it is. And unfortunately, sometimes those are really tough conversations for people to have because they feel that there's that stigma. And that's why today I throw my entire life out there, and I'm an open book, and I share as much as I can because I want people to know. But I too felt that way. I felt that way when I was going through my own recovery, that I just couldn't say anything because I felt a sense of shame, or I felt I didn't want people to know. And I really, I got through it, but I don't know that I would recommend that for others, just to keep it all to themselves, because we need others. And I do write about that in my book, is that connecting with others. But yes, I did go through this on my own.
Wow. And I think that's so, I love that you shared that, because there is no cookie cutter I mean, there are, in your book, I'm sure there are steps and processes and approaches and systems and strategies that we have in any change you want to make in your life. But sometimes I think we forget about that individualized piece of it, that you have to put yourself into what you're learning, and you have to go, that works for me, I'm going to do that. That doesn't work for me, I'm not going to do that. I think that's a lot of reasons why people they feel like they're going to lose themselves even more in the process if so-and-so told me to go do this and that doesn't feel right for me. So I love that you did it on your own, but you're also saying maybe you need to do it on your own, maybe you need to get help, maybe you need a combination of both. I think the willingness to want to change is
And
that first step.
that is the key. That is the key right there, because you can't teach someone the lesson. They have to want it. And the first step in reset, so reset stands for recognize, eliminate, structure, elevate, and transform. And within each one of those 5 steps, there are about 4 or 5 different principles. And in recognize, it is recognizing that there is something that doesn't fit in your life, that something needs to change. It also encompasses no more excuses. So I'm a queen of excuses. I'm going to celebrate, or I'm mad, or whatever it was, right? There, I'll start on Monday. So there's no more of that, right? No more excuses.
Yeah.
No more victim. Oh, this always happens to me. Nope, there is none of that. You take ownership of your world. So it's really an empowering step. It's getting your mind prepped for what you're about to walk into. And it's, you want to be the king of your castle, queen of your castle, then you put on that throne, or you put on that, put on that crown, and you sit on that throne. It's yours, and no more excuses. So, so recognizing and really taking ownership, that is the key fundamental. So I love that you just said that, because that's what it boils down to for that first step.
And I bet you're tired of living this double life.
1,000%. I was, and this sounds terrible. But it's honest. It's where I was. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I tried so many different things, and I was just exhausted. I was literally living 2 lives. I mean, one life is busy enough. Can you imagine having 2? And, I traveled a lot for when I was in corporate, and every time I was on a plane, I wanted that plane to go down. When there was turbulence, I thought, man, this would just be an easier, softer way. Just get me out of this, because I just didn't know how to get out of my own way and out of my head. And that's where I was in life. And I think about that, and it makes me sad, because my life is so amazing today. But I was so tired. I was so tired of it, and I didn't know how to get out of my own way. That's where I was. And it really makes me sad to think about, because life is just incredible. So that it was exhausting.
Yeah. And that's hope for people that are in that stage, wherever they are right now. If they're exhausted, if they're overwhelmed, if they're battling something, if they're living a double life and not letting people in, or so scared to get help, you're a story of hope, of change, of choice.
Yeah, we do. It comes, and I will tell you that, because it just seems so daunting sometimes when it's overwhelming, like, where do I start? I'm never going to get out. No, you are. And I will tell you what, if I can get through everything that I had gone through, there is hope for everyone, everyone. And life is so good. Honestly, my life gets better and better every day. And I think you learn to live, elevate. The 4th step is all about living in gratitude and finding your purpose. And once you start to get into the state, once you've weeded out, we talked about, the anger and the negativity, and structure is all about putting standards and boundaries in your life. So you've weeded out what doesn't serve you. Then you put processes in place. You put structure in your life to say, you know what, this is the lane that I'm going to be in. And then you start to find this elevated state where you're living in gratitude. When you start to figure that out, and you're so grateful for just your cat running up to you when you get off of work, or just the tiny little things, oh my gosh, your life really does get better every single day. So you can get there. It's just these tiny little steps that you make and change in your brain, and you relearn things. You can have whatever life you want.
That's beautiful. And you see, it sounds like you're saying you see the world through a different perspective.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
amazing.
I mean, and at any age, it doesn't matter. You can always unlearn. It takes practice. It's that muscle memory, but it's a completely different lens that I look through these days. And it's beautiful. And I tell people, I threw a couple people off. They said, "You're what?" I said, "No, I'm untouchable." Say, yeah, I am untouchable because you can make yourself that way. And then, things come into your spectrum. And that's why I wrote my second book. I wrote specifically I wrote an entire book on boundaries, because to me, I think of boundaries like, I think of a bowling lane. And your standards are those pins at the end. What standards do you want in your life? Do you want happiness? Do you want to go to bed at a certain time? Right? You have your goals, your standards. And then those bumpers, those are your boundaries. You keep out what you don't want and you stay in your lane. So you can bounce all around, but you know where you're going. You're going to those pins at the end. So to me, that's what standards and boundaries are. So it doesn't matter what life comes at me, I have those bumpers up. And I'm just bouncing around in my lane and I'm going towards my happiness because that's the structure that I've put in my life. So that's actually my next book. But yeah, you become untouchable. I mean, it's really your perspective can completely change. And anyway, I could go on and on,
I
but
love that.
I,
So what was the time frame? So when did Reset come out? So from your sobriety and your healing to being an Amazon bestseller with your first book, what was the
yes.
time frame there for that?
So about 7 or 8 months after I was kind of into my sobriety, I will say, I started really thinking about it. Now, mind you, I had a lot of things that I was dealing with as well. There was the whole addiction component, and I quit smoking cigarettes at the same time, and so it was like my brain was a little all over the place. But
Yes.
so I, about 7 or 8 months in, I really took a step back and I said, you know what? I'm working a program. And if this works for me, this is going to work for other people because my story is unique to me, but I am a human and I put my pants on and I walk
Yeah.
just like everyone else. I am no different. We are fundamentally all the same. We just have different flavors of ice cream going on in our life. And I said, I'm going to write a book and I want to use my story. And I really prayed about this. And I do talk about, my connection with my higher power as part of that is part of my story. And, I said, how can I help others? And it was write a book. And I said, I wasn't going to start until I was 1 year sober because I really needed
Mhm.
some dust to settle. So I started writing Reset on my 1 year sobriety date. And it took me probably 4 or 5 months to write. And then I got a coach and we worked together to, really help make this become a bestseller. This was not my first book, but my first book that I tried to publish. And so there's a lot that goes on with the whole writing and understanding
Yeah.
your tone and your voice and all that. But so it came out March 11th of this year, 2020. And then I started writing my next book when COVID hit, and and now that one's about to be released. So, yeah, it was less than 2 years since when I got sober to when Reset came out.
Oh, I love that so much because I think that's such a myth that people think they have to be 20 years ahead before they can help someone or
Mm,
500 steps ahead before you can impact somebody's life. And you just proved and showed that in 2 years time from where you life was before to where life is now can be so vastly different when you change.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
lived it, I breathed it, and now I just want to push it out there. And it's all fresh, it's real, and I use my methodology literally every day. There are pieces that I pull on, and so I live it, I breathe it, and this is what I coach others with now. So
yeah. And that's another myth. People go, well, I need all these certifications and degrees. And yeah, those are helpful. those are great depending on what you're in and what market you're in, but there's power in story,
Mm-hmm.
in processes. If you are your own client per se, I
Yep.
always tell people you've been through something and you figured something out. And if
Yep.
you can teach that process to someone, you can
Yep.
coach, you can impact, you can change lives. So I love that we're hitting on those myths and those objections of why people don't do the thing they really want to do.
Yeah. I remember I was a recruiter just for a short stint in my life. And I was at this recruiting fair. I had some job descriptions I was trying to fill. And this gentleman walked up to me, young guy, and he stuck his hand out and he said, so and so, PhD. I mean, I think I was older than the guy, and I think I was like 24. I don't know, 23. I don't know. But anyhow, and we didn't end up even moving forward with this guy at all, not because I didn't think he was smart, but because the guy has no life experience.
Yeah.
He's book smart, but life experience goes so far. So don't discredit that. I mean, I am absolutely, I believe in higher education. Go for it. I plan on, PhD as part of my, my roadmap, but don't let that stop you, because life experience goes so far. So don't sell yourself short if that's where you want to be, because that really, and when you can connect with people and say, you know what, I've been, and again, my story isn't your story, but I hope that you get something from my story, and it's in how you tell your life and how you moved and you navigated, and you can connect with people regardless of where they're at. You just find those fundamental human elements. So yeah, don't sell yourself short if that's where you want to be.
Yeah. Now you talked a bit about anger and emotions.
Mm.
Were there any emotions that came up for you in your healing that you didn't expect?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, one thing I really had to learn, and I don't know if this was, there is an emotion. I will say, okay, so here's my answer. This was a great question. I had to learn to accept help. I was very, and I wrote a whole chapter on it. I was very adamant about, I got this. I can do this on my own, right? And the reality is that, yeah, YouTube makes it really easy to DIY a lot of things. But do you want to be an expert plumber and tile layer and car fixer upper? Do you want to do all those things, or do you need to rely on others? And as I was going through, especially as I was getting sober and making changes in my life, so I'll just say making changes because I don't want people to get lost in the sober piece. But as I was going through a lot of these changes, I realized that I actually needed help, because I needed to take that time and focus on myself. I didn't want to exert the energy on, I had projects in my house and things that I was doing. And I'm not saying go outsource everything,
Right.
but you need to, there's an element of a friendship and relationships. There's an ebb and flow, and people just genuinely want to help each other. And I blocked a lot of those relationships from flourishing because I stopped them at the gate. I was happy to help them, but no, I got me. And I tell you what, I have not only been able to connect with people at a deeper level, but I've been given time to focus on myself. I mean, there was this, it's like I cleared the air. And I say that it really does connect with feelings, because in a sense, I think some of there's an element of pride as well that
Yeah.
goes along with it. Like, no, man, I got this, I can take care of myself, and, I can pay all my bills, and I can do all the, right. And that's, I mean, the good qualities, right? Absolutely good qualities. But I had to learn to say, can you help me? And I did not expect to go through that as I went through all of my changes. And it's a chapter in my book because I believe it is such a fundamental component of just living your best life. And again, it's not let's outsource everything, but it's just being willing to ask for help, accepting help when people offer it, and being okay with it.
That's such a great answer. I love that. That's the word that was coming up for me, was like ego. Like we
Mm,
have this ego that we
yeah.
don't want to let, like you said, I got it. Meanwhile, we're crumbling or we're
Right.
overwhelmed or we don't got it.
Yeah.
But how dare we let someone in and let them see that we don't got it. But then
Yeah.
when they come and help you, then you get it, right? You get
Yeah.
to stay in your lane and do what you need to do, your healing, or even something as simple as you said, outsourcing things so you can focus on one thing or one area or the thing that you're really trying to heal or build or do.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need 100 people. Sometimes you just need one or two that you let
Yeah.
in and let
Yeah.
help you. I love that.
And I remember telling people, "No, I got this." And they would turn it around and say, "Hey, Jen, but remember when you did this for me?" And
Mm.
you could almost just sense that, man, I thought we were friends. So you really are not only putting more on yourself, but you're limiting those close connections with people. So I would really just encourage people just to think about that. And this was a huge, hard thing for me to go through because I was very, very reluctant to ever ask for help. And I think that I've gone through some trials and challenges ever since then, so that, my higher power could put me in situations where I had to feel comfortable with asking for help, and I've been learning through those. So yeah, I hope that resonates with someone.
Yeah. Do you ever have the fear that you're going to relapse or that you're going to go back? Or are you kind of like, no, I got system strategies, higher power? Like, do you ever fear that one or two decisions maybe could snowball it all back in the other way?
Yeah, another great question. I do not fear that at all. I have, like I said, I have made myself, I feel untouchable. Now, I want to say this because I think, especially if anybody's going through, if they're an alcoholic, there's something called a pink cloud. And, I think we get a little too far ahead of ourselves. And that's when relapse can happen. And we, think, oh, I got this. And now I can drink,
Mm-hmm.
socially, and I'll be fine. And so I just really want to be careful with how I come across. I don't fear, because I have put structure in my life. The last step in reset is transform, and it's about how you make your life. T stands for transform, and it's transforming your life into a lifestyle. And so for me, people ask me, I love to work out, and they say, "Oh, what's your diet?" And I say, "I don't diet." And it's because it's a lifestyle. I like to eat every couple of hours, this amount of protein. That's my lifestyle. It's not a diet. When you start to diet, that's when I'm on a diet. You feel like you're deprived of something. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I never adopted not drinking. And not drinking wasn't my problem, actually, or the drinking wasn't. I mean, it was a problem. It was a huge problem. It caused me a lot of problems, but I was the problem, right? The drinking was the symptom. And so I don't I don't look at drinking and romanticize it and say, "Man, I want that," because my lifestyle now is that it's not a thing. So I don't worry about the relapse. I focus on me, and
Mm-hmm.
I really, at the core of those 7 words, you need to learn to love yourself. That that changed my entire life. And so if I continue to focus on that in my program, I don't fear. I am my biggest supporter now, and I want the life that I have, and I have it. So I don't fear. That's a great question.
And that's a beautiful answer. I absolutely love that. It's proof that if you do the work and you dig into strategies and systems, you have a mindset that carries you through no matter what life throws at you. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're always going to have hard things. That's a
Yeah.
part of being a human. That's a part of growth. That's a part of
Yes.
change when you're doing it right and you're
Yes.
going after things that you want and you're setting boundaries and having, holy, like how many difficult conversations sometimes need to happen when you're setting boundaries.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
mindset that you set, which is why you're untouchable and able to
Mm-hmm.
do what you do. Tell me about the book. So, Reset. Oh, I have a link here. I will put that in the show notes, guys, so they can go on Amazon. They can buy Reset. And
Yes.
your next book, can we talk about that coming out?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I
tell us
love
about
it.
that. Yeah.
So my next book, I'm a little amazed myself. So I started, so when I was writing Reset, which is not a prerequisite to read the next one. So the next book is called Defining Your Boundaries. It's the
Mm,
yes, no playbook to what you want in life.
mm,
And when I wrote a chapter, so Reset has a lot of different topics, and we've talked about some of those on the show here today.
yeah.
And one of those topics was standards and boundaries. And when I wrote that chapter, it was, I mean, I lived this. Everything in the book I lived. It wasn't that what should I write about? I found the book pretty easy to write because it was all what I went through. But when I wrote that chapter specifically, I felt like I was in a video game and I went to the next level and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. This is amazing. I want to write a book on this. So now, so I had this idea in my head for about 10 months. And because I realized that I had only scratched the surface, that there was so much more. And I was like a kid in a candy shop and I just wanted to dig in and just really explore boundaries more and see how I could set them up in my life and what they would do for me. And man,
Mm,
I just elevated my life once I started tapping into these things even more so than I had.
yeah.
So on April 1st, 2020, I woke up. Now, mind you, COVID had just started, and there's a lot of fear and panic and anxiety. And I just, I kept thinking in my mind, I need to write this book because I have a solution to people's problems. And we are all looking around at the stock market and the deaths and just this unknown thing, and our lives have changed overnight. And how do we stay at peace? And I tell you what, I was I felt very calm as I was watching all of this. And I said, man, I've got these boundaries in my life. Again, those bumpers on the bowling lane. And so I woke up 2:30 in the morning, honest to goodness, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning on April 1st. And I went and I grabbed my laptop and I said, Jen, you have 30 days to get this book out the door. And that's what I did. And not only did I write it, I sent it off, I got it edited, went back through, went through that whole process. I also have recorded the Audible as well. So the Audible will be coming out, and so I'm really excited about it. But boundaries to me, it's the answer to everything. It's how do you stay in that state of peace? What, again, using those pins at the end of the lane, what do you want to achieve in your life? Is it happiness? Is it, and it doesn't have to necessarily be just a feeling, right? I think it's feelings, but it's also tangible things. I want to achieve this goal. I want to get more sleep at night. I want to, and then you put up those boundaries to say, okay, how do I get there? How do I achieve this? And so there is so much power in setting those up, that even when things happen like COVID and the world changes right before you, you already know where you're going and what boundaries you want in your life. And if you just take that time to self-reflect and you really get in your head and you're not scared of that. And I will say one important thing, it's understanding, it's putting your attention into what you can control.
Mm,
We don't control the death toll. We don't control the stock market. We don't control all these things. And yet that's what's consuming a lot of our time.
yep.
So if we understand, first of all, we have a choice in the matter. We choose happiness. We choose to be optimistic or pessimistic. We're happy, we're sad. We choose that. And
Yeah.
then you focus your attention on what you can control. And then within those, you set your boundaries. So it's like a funnel. And if you can follow that funnel, it's a choice. What do you control? Now, how do you structure your life? It's a very easy formula, and you can stay in a state of peace even when the world is going through what we just went through with this crazy pandemic.
Mm, I love that. I love too that 2:30 in the morning, you got up, you had a thought, you took action.
Yes. Yeah.
Gave your
I,
30 days, gave yourself a deadline.
yep.
Those are like the little games, like you were talking earlier about the little games you used to play when you were driving with your anger. Those are the little business
Yep.
games I tell people. Give yourself a deadline. When are you going to
Yep.
do that by? Thought comes in. If you don't put it down on paper, it's lost. Even if you don't
Yep.
know what you're going to do with it, where you're going to go with it, thought, idea, plan, execute, go.
Yep.
I love that. Is there a third book kicking around in your brain?
Yes. So my next book will be on self-love, and I am so excited for this one. So there's a um, in fact, there is a freebie that's out on my website, and I think I call it the Guide to Happiness, but it's how to reconnect with yourself. So I would say for anyone that's looking to how to reconnect with yourself, there's a freebie that's out there, but my entire next book will be on self-love, and I am so excited to get this book going. So yes, so I plan on digging into a lot of the concepts that I wrote about in Reset on a much more detailed level. So yeah, self-love is up next.
Ooh, I love it. And listeners, you can't see. I'm staring Jen in the face right now. Her eyes are beaming. Her smile is ginormous. Like she is coming to life talking about these books that she's created and going to create and sharing her goodness in the world. And that is our wish for you, that you do the same. You realize you have a choice. You make a change. You accept help or ask for help. Even buying one of Jen's books. You know, a book can change your life. A book is the first step sometimes of thinking about something differently. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make sure, Jen, we have your website, www.jensugermeyer.com. We're going to have links to buy Reset. On the day this is launching, your new book.
That's right.
Out on June 25th, 99 cents. They can pick up the Audible, it is, you said, right?
The ebook, will be available, but only on June 25th.
Ooh, so fast action deadline. You got to pick that up today if you want to get that. And Jen, is there anything in closing? Is there anything that they need to know that we didn't hit on yet about making a change and loving yourself and going from disconnected back to connected to their self? Is there any final thing, anything we missed?
Yeah, you need to get honest. And I think of my dad sometimes when he goes to the doctor, and I see him eating. Well, I don't live with him, but he'll tell me, he says, yeah, I'm eating really healthy. I've got a doctor's appointment here in 2 weeks. I'm like, who are we kidding, right, Dad? So I want you to have a healthy lifestyle throughout. So we need to be honest with ourselves, because if we're trying to just, have a test result for our test with the doctor, we're not truly digging in. You don't have to go be honest with the world about where you were, where you are, what you're trying. You don't have to go have a monologue, but you have to get honest with yourself. You have to be okay with getting in your own head and having those honest conversations. Think about when you were a kid and there were all those faces on the wall and your teacher said, how are you feeling today? Ask yourself that, and then be really honest. I feel this. And if you want to be somewhere else, think about how you get there. But get honest, get in your head. Don't be afraid of it. That's really, really key.
Listeners, I hope you'll come back to this. There were so many good mindset and strategies, just so much goodness to give you hope and inspiration and motivation, and that belief in yourself that the life that Jen has created, you can create a life that you choose, that you love. And it all starts with one thought, one decision. Getting honest with yourself. Oh, I love that so much. www.jensugermeyer.com. I hope you'll go check her out. I hope you'll buy her books. I hope you'll pick up on all the love she's putting out into the world. And I hope that you'll put your love out into the world, because now more than ever, we need it. Jen, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I honor you for being here, and I can't wait to see you next time on The Lisa Pezik Show. Bye for now.